Friends, late good evening. Hoping I am audible and visible. Is it audible and visible? Am I audible and visible? Am I audible and visible? Sushantu Babu and Avijit Babu. Why is my handset is silent? No? Am I audible? Yes. I am audible and visible. There is a time lag period. There is a lag period between my desktop and handset. Definitely there will be lag period in your sets also. My handset is silent. Okay, let me silent. Okay. Let me start today. Today, I'll continue from 1933. Subhas Chandra is in Europe, in exile. And first I'll talk on Bose-Patel manifesto. Yesterday I have talked on it, that is Patel-Bose manifesto. That is Vittal Bhai Patel and Subhas Chandra joint declaration, press declaration from Vienna against the leadership of Mohandas Gandhi. In January 1933, after a long gap of more than 1 decade, Gandhiji started his non-violence movement. And in May, just after a few months, he suspended the movement. The countrywide civil disobedience movement against the proposed communal award of Magdalen was suddenly suspended and withdrawn by Gandhi. Subhas Chandra Bose and Vittal Bhai Patel from Vienna, were awfully sorry and offended for the sudden suspension of movement. They issued Bose-Patel manifesto from Vienna on May 1933, which stated, "We are clearly of the opinion that," under quote, "as a political leader, Mahatma Gandhi has failed. Non-cooperation movement cannot be given up, but the form of the non-cooperation will have to be changed to a more militant, and the fight for freedom is to be waged on all fronts." And naturally, this manifesto, this declaration jointly from Subhas Chandra Bose and Vittal Bhai Patel, disturbed Gandhi and his followers in India. This is Bose-Patel manifesto. Okay. Then I will talk on about the Indian political conference in London. Indian political conference in London. Indian political conference in London. He was declared as the president of this conference, though Subhas Bose was in mainland of the Europe, and his entry to England was not allowed. On In June 1933, the students in London, Indian students in London, and a prominent person, Sarpuriji Shaktalbha, that is a member of the British Communist Party, organized Indian political conference at the Friars Hall in London. Subhash Chandra Bose was requested to preside over the meeting, conference, but he could not join this said conference due to British ban restricting his entry into London. As such, his presidential address was read out. The entry of the copy of the said speech, which was delivered on his behalf in the conference, was banned in India to be published in any media. And you will see also, after a few years when you will see his book Indian Struggle is published in England. British government declared it banned in India. But Nehru's books, whichever published anywhere, were never banned. Rather, there were circulars in the government circle advising the bureaucrats to read Nehru's books. But in case of Subhash Bose, there is always ban. And this his fiery speech, very strongly worded speech, as the president of this conference, was read out by Dr. Kiran Bhattacharya in London. I am just giving one of the few sentences of his speech. This mentality, under quote, this mentality of British will continue for many more days if we fail to make life of British and their agents fearful, inactive and unbearable by armed resistance and economic blockade. Civil disobedience movement has failed to do this. And you will see this speech and the language of this Patel Bose manifesto almost has similar tone and similar content, that the resistance, disobedience movement need to be armed against British in India. Its speech in London also, the manifesto has same language. The civil disobedience movement is failing. That has to be armed with armed resistance. That angered the Conservative Party in UK. Then there is this, and I have mentioned yesterday the death of Patel. After the death of senior Patel, that is senior Patel, Subhash Chandra has to arrange the transport of his dead body from Europe to India. And in the last days, the life of Senior Patel, Bose was on the side of him. And also I have told that whatever will Senior Patel made for Subhas Chandra, 1 lakh rupees, to be used for propaganda for India and Europe, was challenged by Junior Patel, Vallabhbhai Patel. I mentioned yesterday. Then I'll go to another incident in Europe, that is in Rome. Inauguration of Oriental Institute and a Oriental Students' Conference in Rome, where Subhas Chandra was a state guest in Rome. And please keep in mind, when in February Subhas Chandra was moving from Bombay to Venice, then to Rome, then to Vienna. In this route for 2 days he had to stay in Venice. And that time government of Mussolini sent his officers to receive him and to treat him as a state guest. And this time again, when the government of Mussolini is arranging to inaugurate Oriental Institute in Rome and arranging the conference of the Oriental Students Conference, this time again Subhas Chandra was invited as a state guest, and his stay was arranged in the best hotel in Rome. Hotel's name is the best hotel, Excelsior, the best hotel of that time. Let me read few lines in this regard from the book My Uncle Netaji by Ashok Nath. Yes. 1988. Yes. 88. Indian students' organizations all over Europe, including ours in Munich, were invited by the Italian government, and a very large contingent of Indian students from Germany visited Rome. Apart from free traveling from Italian frontier to Rome, the Italian government made excellent arrangements for boarding and lodging and sightseeing for all the delegates, not only Indians but other Asians, free of cost, and to the delegates also issued free passes to them for travel throughout the Italy. Italy occupied a place of very great importance in the program of his activities during Uncle's sojourn in Europe in that 30s. Apart from the fact that he did not have the opportunity of visiting the country of Mazzini, Garibaldi and Cavour during his first visit to Europe in 1919 to 21. The compelling reason for going there was that of the government of Italy had come out openly now in support of India's struggle for independence. The most eloquent testimony to this was the interview of the head of the government, Signor Mussolini, had with Mahatma Gandhi in the previous year, now with Subhas Chandra, for consecutive 3 days. Mussolini gave him 3 days, continuous 3 days, for lengthy interviews, exchange of thoughts between these two persons. Exchange. That much importance was given to Subhas Chandra. That much importance. And I'll, yes, inaugurate, and Mussolini himself inaugurated the Oriental Institute in Rome. Subhas Chandra Bose was the state guest. At that time, many Italians were eager to serve Subhas Chandra. One very excellent engineer, his name is Signor Carbonani. He was an excellent engineer of diesel electric locomotives. He took leave from his company for a period, for one fortnight, to accompany Subhas Chandra, his stay in Italy, and accompany to all places so that Subhas Chandra gets some comfort in his sojourn in Italy. So much the people loved him, and in this conference, the students of the Syria, Arab lands, Palestine, all persons came in contact with Subhas Chandra, and they heard the speeches very carefully. They got from him the spirit of liberation, because all these countries were in bondage. And this conference, this congress was addressed by Uncle. His address was published prominently in press in all over the Italy, side by side with glowing accounts of his career, with special emphasis on courage, sacrifice, and political ideas and activities. His fame spread to other cities of Italy, even amongst the common people, and he was often besieged by large groups of admirers, not only in Rome, but in Milan and other cities. One such admirer was Signor Carbonani, an operator of diesel electric locomotives in Milan, who take leave from his work to be near Uncle for any personal service he may be able to render. Can you imagine? He took leave from his company for a fortnight to give service to Subhas Chandra. They were so thrilled and so much glad to see such a man, such a man from Bharatvarsh. And this Subhas Chandra, I have already told that his entry into England was banned. His entry into Germany was allowed subsequently on separate application and persuasion to British authority in Berlin. But he was never allowed to enter into Russia. He wanted to enter into Russia, but was not allowed. But in Europe, in all the countries, wherever he has gone, in many places he was received cordially. But in some places, in the lands, in the countries who were absolutely pro-British, everywhere British agents are following him, and British agents were recording what he is telling, what he is speaking, to whom he is discussing, what he is doing. All were being recorded by those British agents. And even some countries, his speeches were not allowed to be published in media. In Rome, besides Mussolini, he met Professor Gentile and Count Ciano. This Count Ciano is a politically, he will be much stronger subsequently during Second Great War. And subsequently in the Second Great War period, you will see this Ciano very active, giving very active role to the activities, or role helping Netaji, at the time he is Netaji, Netaji for his activities in Europe. This Siano, Count Siano. Count Siano is most possibly the son-in-law of Mussolini, subsequently, Count Siano, who acquired a very high up position in the hierarchy of the government. The ruling class in Italy were already well informed about the uncle, and earlier reports sent by Dr. Gino Scarpa of the Foreign Office, who had previously worked in Consul General of Italy in Calcutta. You see, Calcutta contacts. Not only that, the other cities of India and was known to have been sympathetic to the India cause. Dr. Scarpa had, during his tenure in India, came in contact with most of the prominent Indian political leaders of 30s. Further, he knew leading intellectuals in India. In the time, we saw Dr. Scarpa several times with uncle in Rome in December. Among other intellectuals, he met Professor Tusi, Orientalogist and Indologist of the international fame, who had been visiting Professor to Shanti Niketan. I am seeing Subhas Bose in this period, in 33-34, visiting some very highly intellectual persons in different parts of Europe who has got contact with India and particularly contact with Kobi Guru, Shanti Niketan. Shanti Niketan. These informations and some other informations, when I demolish the story of the Great Escape by Shishir Bose, these informations, Kobi Guru, his activities, his secret contacts with Subhas Bose, his secret contacts with revolutionaries, and his contacts with these high intellectual persons in Europe, that helped me to come to a conclusion that Kobi Guru has a very important, very sacred, very important, very sacred, very vital role, though in a small part, in planning and executing Subhas Bose's going out of Calcutta via Afghanistan, Moscow and then Berlin. There is a definite role of Kobi Guru. Another important man who has connections with Kobi Guru, with Kobi Guru and Shanti Niketan, another important man is page 93. Here is one person, Professor Tusi, the Orientalogist and Indologist, international fame of Italy, who visited Shanti Niketan. Another important man. Another important man. Yes. And in fact, the memorandum and one thing, and that time I told you Germany was not very sympathetic to the freedom movement of India, not very sympathetic. At that time, the German government's policy was pro-British, and German government was doing nothing, was trying to avoid everything which may create discomfort or anger in the minds of the British. That's why the German government was not encouraging anyway the nationalist students in Germany. Even German government was following a policy of hatred towards Indians, and hatred, not only hatred, And and British government, British always throughout the world tried to create an image, a very inferior quality image about India throughout the world. They are trying to project India as the land of snakes, land of mantras, land of idol worshipping, a land of idiots, less intellectuals, having no civilization. This way they were projecting the image of India throughout the world. And the same policy was being followed by the Germans. They believed that, or as they have to please Britain, they are doing the same thing. In the Hitler's main camp, there are some ugly words about the Indians and Indian civilization. And also in the writings of some of the high officers of the German government, there are the expressions of hatred about India and Indian civilization. And the students of India who are reading in different parts of Germany, they are very angry. And Subhas Chandra drafted the resolutions in English to be sent to the German government office. And his English drafting was translated into Germany by different students in different parts of Germany. And at one time, German government has to correct their policy. The man behind all these things was Subhas Chandra. Not only that, one time on this issue, Subhas Chandra came face to face with the highest authority of Germany. They have to change subsequently their government policy about India and Indian civilization. And the Geneva, yes. In Munich, that is Germany, during his short stay, uncle met Dr. Karl Hashofer, then professor of world politics at the University of Munich. Professor Hashofer had formerly been the Colonel General in Imperial German Army and had a few most interesting career. After the First World War, he had been a tutor to the Emperor of Japan on military strategy, politics, etc. He knew Japan and China intimately and had also been to India and cherished profound regard for Indian culture. He was also prominent member of a group of high intellectuals. But what was most important was he was also a prominent member of the National Socialist Party. There is the Nazi Party. Was regarded as one of the elder statesmen. And this man from Munich, uncle went to Prague, where he had been invited on the occasion of the inauguration on 23rd March of the Indian Society under the auspices of Oriental Society. The moving spirit behind this was Professor Lesny, the eminent Indologist of Czechoslovakia, who had been in India, including Santiniketan. The annual conference of the Federation of Indian Students Abroad was held in Prague in 1936 subsequently. In this way, Subhas Chandra was developing relations with the mainland of Europe, though his entry into UK was banned. And also stand of Germany, government stand, attitude of German government was following a white supremacist attitude. German government, the Britishers in India, they always showed their white supremacist attitude. The white race is superior. This white supremacist attitude was also shown by the Germans against Indians. And some of the Germans were abusing Indians as niggers. But gradually, under protest, their attitude changed. Because Subhas Chandra gave a call of boycotting the German universities. Remember, in Europe, in the universities, a good number of students come from Asian countries, particularly India, in those days, and that is a source of income. If the Indian students boycott going to Germany, to the universities, that's a very bad name. Not only a bad name, but will give a bad image to that nation. Also financially, that's a bad proposition. Gradually, Germany changed its stand. Also, subsequently during Second Great War, the geopolitical factors changed and Germany had to change his attitude from the pro-British attitude to anti-British attitude. And that was utilized by Subhas Bose. But before that, Subhas Chandra has to remain acquainted with the political personalities of Germany. Without that, it was not possible by going suddenly to Germany and arranging his government from there and performing activities. The persons were acquainted to him from before. And one thing I must mention, one thing happened in Belgrade. The British ambassador in Belgrade, Subhas Chandra, I have told Subhas Chandra has gone to each land he has permitted to, all countries. He has gone to all countries and gone to see country, not only the land and beautiful places, to see the factories, agriculture lands, factories of the arms production, dairy production, leather industry, everywhere he has gone. How the technology has developed their qualities. That helped him to develop his ideas. The man has to turn into a statesman. He has to learn everything. But one thing happened, I should mention that happened in Belgrade. Belgrade was the capital of Yugoslavia. At that time, Yugoslavia was a member of the Anglo-French group. And their king's name was Alexander. Alexander was a rabid pro-British man. A rabid Anglophile. Rabid pro-British man. And there, in their capital of Belgrade, the British ambassador saw that Subhas Bose has come to Belgrade. He sent the agents. Every moment, the agents were behind Subhas Chandra, noting down what he is doing, to whom he is speaking. And under the influence of this British ambassador in Belgrade, the government of Yugoslavia passed an order not to publish the speeches of Subhas Chandra in their journals. That's why I want to mean not that in all countries in mainland of Europe he received good welcome, not everywhere, because many countries were pro-British. Many countries of mainland Europe were pro-British, and you have to change their attitudes by repeated persuasion, their contacts, and diplomacy is not easy. To be a politician is not difficult, but to be a diplomat, because diplomacy is a much higher aptitude. You can convert some enemy or a neutral man to your friends only when that force or that individual, that nation will be convinced that by friendship also that nation or that person will be benefited. A diplomat role is this, to convince that nation or that person that this friendship with him is good for his benefit. That has to be negotiated, that has to be argued, that in that way that nation leadership has to be made convinced. And that cannot be possible by sitting in India, by sitting in your own home. You have to have dialogues, contacts, discussion. You have to persuade. You have to develop your own foreign policy, your own diplomacy. Then you will benefit from association with those countries. Even you can turn your enemy or turn a neutral man to your side. Even you can bring a friend of enemy to your side. That is diplomacy. Subhas Chandra in this period, and today I will not speech, and in Belgrade, Subhas Chandra was described in media as a fascist, as a communist. Under the influence of this British ambassador in Belgrade and the Anglophile king of Yugoslavia, that is Alexander, media started describing, projecting Subhas Chandra as a fascist, as a communist. Can you imagine? Stupids are everywhere in the world. How can a fascist be a communist? A communist can be a fascist. But how can fascist be a communist? I do not know. And I will stop today. So today I will just mention, we are seeing the Europeans are seeing Subhas Bose as a politician, as a diplomat, as an ambassador of India to Europe. Sir, whether the present days many countries in Europe are pro-British or the situation has radically changed after Great War II? Yes, it has changed. It has changed. You remember, Sujanta Babu, that time in the period between First Great War and Second Great War, the economic capital or finance capital of the world was London. Finance is a very important thing in dealing political affairs of the country. That compelled many European countries even to be pro-British. But England today is no more the finance capital of the world. Now world is multipolar. And naturally European countries, also militarily UK is much weaker. And today European countries need not be pro-British. But many countries are against British. Atanu Bhattacharya spoke. And today the persons are seeing Subhas Bose as a politician, as a diplomat, as an ambassador of Bharatvarsha and its civilization. But there is a man, different man, who is seeing Subhas Bose in a different angle. Subhas Bose is a spiritualist. After all, Subhas Bose is a spiritualist. That is the real character of Subhas Chandra. His politics, his diplomacy, all these outside character, external character. That is the situation compulsion. Subhas Chandra has to do. But behind all these things, at the core character is spirituality. That is being narrated by a person, the German Jews, a psychoanalyst, practicing psychoanalysis, living in Vienna. And that time Vienna was a separate country, free from Germany. But influence of German Nazi party was also in the life of Vienna. I have told you Vienna at that time was about 60 lakh people. Austria was 60 lakh people, of which 20 lakh was only in the capital of Vienna. Austria was the country, Austria. And that year in 1933, the Prime Minister and the party which was governing the Austria was Socialist Party. And the Nazi Party was trying to annex Austria with Germany. They were trying to infiltrate into Austria. And they are also creating some disturbance in Austria. And the Prime Minister of the country, at that time, the Austria was considered as the most developed socialist country of the world. And that time, Prime Minister of the country even was killed. Suspicion is these are the killing by the Nazi party. And the Jews in Austria was also in a fearful situation. Anytime, if Germany take over the Austria, their life will be endangered. And this lady, just young recently married lady, was walking on the street. He was moving, he was going to buy fish from a nearby, a small Jewish fish market. And on the way, he met some neighbors, and entering into the fish market, he bought some, is a separate Jews fish market. From that fish market, he bought some fish and coming back towards his apartment. On the way, suddenly he came across a man. Now I am reading from that her book, Subhas Chandra Bose as I knew him. And when he is coming back, this event is of spring 1933, just few months after Subhas Chandra's entering into Vienna, spring 1933, the first encounter. And always in her mind of Kitty Kurti, always thinking how much they can be able to live in Vienna. When they will be attacked, their life is so fearful. To him, he is thinking in mind, Hitler is a very notorious man, narrow-minded, sly, dangerous, sadist, and a dreadful Jewish baiter. And also he is suspicious because Austria is the birthplace of Hitler. After all, Austria has given birth to Hitler, this notorious man. He may come any time to this Austria, capture whole of the Austria and Vienna. Her life family life will be finished. In this fearful situation, he is walking on the street in his mind. He suddenly came across a man. Walking, I am quoting, walking to my apartment, I was suddenly struck by a strange figure slowly approaching me. It is a tall, slender man, obviously Indian. He was clad in a dark suit, not unlike the priests. He wore a small cream-colored Gandhi cap that made him stand out. His face, a dark olive, was round and childlike, yet strikingly intelligent. It was not only his intelligence that struck me, but his all-encompassing glance, which, taking in all details, immediately arrived at the core of the matter, the very crux of things. A glance which, going beyond the outer appearance of things, immediately arrived at their very essence. Another thing that struck me as unusual was his way of walking. His slow, erect gait gave the impression of singular dignity and control. Forgetting my shyness, I stopped and gazed after the man. Strangely enough, he too stopped and looked back at me. We smiled briefly. He perhaps somewhat astonished, while I confessed that I was abased. This was our first encounter. No doubt, I had run across an outstanding person, a mystic, a spiritual man. Oh, how I wished I were a young man. Oh, how I wished I were a young man instead of a young woman. Then I could have approached him, introduced myself, and spoken with no reservation. How unfortunate always to be hampered by convention. What a pity to miss contact with such a man. A wise Hindu, a Babel like Berlin, in a Babel like Berlin, to lose sight of a person of obvious spirituality at a moment when one was so in need of strength. This is a book. I have read out only one page for you. You see, at a first glance, this component in the character of Subhas Chandra, spirituality, the bedrock of Subhas Chandra, is noticed by a foreigner. Who has never seen Subhas Chandra before, who has never talked to him before, who do not know who the man is. But from the very appearance, Kirtikurti noted this man is spiritualist. This is the real central character of this man. And subsequently I will discuss many interactions with Kirtikurti, why Bose is there, how can he meet such notorious persons of the Nazi party, all these discussions and dialogues, and how Kirtikurti wants to know Tantra from Subhas Chandra, and how Subhas Chandra is educating Kirtikurti on her own subject of psychoanalysis. Subsequently, I will discuss. That is a very short book, very small book, but I must acclaim, I must congratulate this German Jewish psychoanalyst of a very young age to know Subhas Chandra, his composition, his bedrock. But sorry, we the Indians, we the Bharatians, have failed to know the real background, the real composition, the central core of this phenomenon, of this personality. Let me stop here today. Subhas Chandra's all activities, literary activities, his politics, his diplomacy, his activity as a pressman, as a professor in the college, all these, his statesmanship, his role as a army general, all these are secondary. All the manifestations of his central core character, he is spiritualist. Let me stop here today. Any question? Any question? Any question? Abhijit Babu, namaskar. Yes, both. Good evening. Okay, let me stop here. For 1 week, I will be outside Bengal. After coming back, I will meet you again, my friends. Thank you. Good night.